"You're the one who gave me this scar," said the little girl to the millionaire, and then everyone discovered something that would change their lives forever. Let me know what you thought of this story with a rating from 0 to 10 and tell me which city you're watching from. I'd love to know if you enjoyed my story and get to know you better, so please subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The flash of cameras illuminated Michael Ashford's serious face as he prepared to announce another of his multi-million-dollar ventures. At 42, the entrepreneur had built a real estate empire that had completely transformed the landscape of Oakbridge. His grey eyes scanned the crowd of reporters gathered in front of the lot where the Hope Gardens residential complex would be erected. Another project that promised to generate millions in profit. Michael adjusted his impeccable Italian suit and positioned himself behind the microphone. He had learned to control every gesture, every expression, every word. The coldness he exuded was not just a professional mask. It was his second nature, developed over decades of building his empire with relentless determination. Since taking over the family business at 25, following the mysterious disappearance of his father, Augustus Ashford, Michael had become a legend in the regional real estate sector. "Ladies and gentlemen of the press," he began, his firm voice echoing across the construction site. "Hope Gardens represents more than an investment. It is a commitment to the future of Oakbridge, offering decent housing for families who dream of owning their own home." Questions began to fly from the reporters, but Michael answered with the precision of someone who had rehearsed every response. He talked about square footage, delivery schedules, banking partnerships, numbers, always numbers. That was how he saw the world, through spreadsheets, contracts, and projected profits. It was then that a small figure emerged from among the reporters, moving with the agility of someone who knew every corner of those streets. Lily, just 4 years old with worn-out clothes and disheveled hair, made her way through the adult's legs until she was right in front of the businessman. Her large, dark eyes fixed on Michael with an intensity that was unsettling for someone so young. The child raised her small arm, pointing directly at the entrepreneur's face. Her childish voice cut through the air like a blade. "You're the one who gave me this scar." The silence that followed was deafening. Michael felt the blood run cold in his veins as he looked at the girl's forehead, where a crescent moon-shaped scar stood out against her dark skin. It was exactly like the mark he himself carried on his left wrist, hidden under the cuff of his dress shirt. The reporters turned to the child, some cameras redirecting to capture the unusual scene. Michael remained paralyzed, a strange sense of familiarity taking over his chest. There was something about that girl, something that stirred memories buried in a dark corner of his mind. "Lily! Lily! Come here!" The hoarse voice of an elderly woman echoed from across the street. Carla, 67 years old, ran as fast as her tired legs would allow, carrying a bag of recyclable materials on her back. Her eyes showed panic as she saw the girl approaching the famous businessman. The woman who collected recyclables had found Lily abandoned 6 months ago, near the same plot of land where Michael was now announcing his new project. Since then, the two had lived together on the streets of downtown Oakbridge, Carla struggling daily to feed and protect the child while her own health deteriorated with each passing month. Carla arrived, breathless, at Lily's side and took her by the hand, murmuring apologies as she tried to pull the girl away from the commotion. But Michael couldn't look away from the child. There was something profoundly disturbing in the way she had recognized him, as if they shared a past he couldn't recall. "I'm sorry, Mr. Ashford," Carla said, bowing her head in reverence. "The girl didn't mean to bother you. She just gets curious when she sees the construction." Michael observed the woman more closely. Her grey hair was tied back with an old scarf, and her calloused hands told the story of decades of hard work. But there was something in her eyes. a deep sadness that seemed to carry ancient secrets. "No problem," Michael replied automatically, though his mind was still processing the unsettling encounter. "The girl. Is she always around here?" "Sometimes," Carla replied, avoiding eye contact. "She likes to watch the machines work. You know how kids are. Curious about these things." Adeline Vance, Michael's assistant for 15 years, approached discreetly. At 38, she knew every expression of her boss, every change in his demeanor, and at that moment, she clearly perceived that something had deeply shaken the man she had always considered imperturbable. "Mr. Ashford," Adeline murmured, lightly touching the entrepreneur's elbow. "The reporters are waiting to continue the press conference." Michael nodded, but his eyes remained fixed on Lily. The girl watched him with the same intensity, as if trying to decipher a puzzle that only she knew. As Carla began to lead her away, Lily shouted over her shoulder, I know you from before." The words echoed in Michael's mind long after the child had disappeared among the downtown buildings. He finished the press conference on autopilot, answering questions without really processing the answers he gave. His mind was completely focused on that identical scar, on those eyes that seemed to hold memories he himself had lost. That night, Michael stayed late in his office, watching the city lights from his window. Adeline had noticed his distraction and decided to discreetly investigate the origin of that strange child. There was something in her boss's reaction that deeply intrigued her. Meanwhile, in a makeshift shack under a nearby overpass, Carla was rocking Lily to sleep, humming a lullaby that the girl herself had taught her months ago. The child snuggled into the lap of the woman who had become her protector, but her eyes remained fixed in the direction from which the voice of the man she had recognized had come. "Grandma Carla," Lily murmured, using the affectionate term she had adopted for the woman. "Why does that man have the same mark as me?" Carla felt her heart tighten. There were secrets in her life she never imagined would need to be revealed, secrets that involved the child in her arms and the powerful businessman she had just publicly confronted. "Sleep, my little one," Carla whispered, avoiding the question. "Tomorrow is a new day." But as Lily finally drifted off to sleep, Carla remained awake, tormented by memories of a past she had sworn never to reveal. The days following the encounter at the press conference unexpectedly transformed Michael Ashford's routine. The businessman, known for his military-like discipline in business, found himself constantly distracted during important meetings. His mind always returned to that child, with penetrating eyes, and the scar that mirrored his own mark. Adeline Vance did not let the change in her boss's behavior go unnoticed. During her 15 years working for Michael, she had learned to read every nuance of his expressions, every shift in his mood, driven by a loyalty that transcended their professional relationship. She decided to discreetly investigate the origin of Lily and the mysterious Carla. On Tuesday morning, Adeline left the office early and headed downtown. She was familiar with the spots where collectors of recyclable materials usually gathered, especially near the city market. After a 2-hour search, she found Carla sorting cans in a small square, while Lily played with makeshift dolls made from plastic bottles. "Excuse me," Adeline said, approaching cautiously. "You're Carla, aren't you?" The elderly woman looked up, immediately tense. "Yes, that's me. Why?" "My name is Adeline. I work for Mr. Michael Ashford. I'd like to talk about the girl." Carla stood up quickly, protectively positioning herself between Adeline and Lily. "We didn't do anything wrong. The girl only approached because she's curious. We won't bother you anymore." "That's not what this is about," Adeline said gently. "Actually, I'd like to help. Mr. Ashford was concerned about the child's well-being." Carla's eyes narrowed with suspicion. She had spent her entire life learning that wealthy people rarely helped without expecting something in return. But something in Adeline's sincerity made her hesitate. "What do you want with Lily?" "Just to make sure she's well taken care of," Adeline replied. "Perhaps we can help with housing, food, medical care." At that moment, Lily approached, holding one of her makeshift dolls. Her large eyes fixed on Adeline with the same unsettling intensity she had shown with Michael. "Do you know the man with the scar?" the girl asked, her small voice filled with curiosity. Adeline knelt down to be at the child's level. "Yes, I do. He's my boss. Why did you say you knew him?" "Because I do," Lily answered with the typical simplicity of a 4-year-old. "He was in the house before the fire." Carla turned pale instantly, her hands trembling as she held her bag of recyclables. "Lily, don't talk nonsense, girl." But Adeline had caught every word. There was something much deeper to this story, something Carla was desperately trying to hide. Meanwhile, Michael was undergoing a disturbing experience at his doctor's office. Dr. Silas Moreno, 55, had been his private physician for over 2 decades. A trusted man of the Ashford family, he had known Michael since adolescence, especially after the accident that had left significant gaps in his childhood memory. "Michael, you seem tense," Dr. Silas observed during the routine checkup. "Is something bothering you?" "Doctor, I've been having fragments of strange memories," Michael confessed, a rare admission for someone who always avoided showing vulnerability. "Mainly related to my childhood, before the accident." Dr. Silas paused, the stethoscope still on the patient's chest. "You know, we've discussed this several times. The trauma you suffered at age 6 significantly affected your memories. It's natural for some fragments to return occasionally. But these are different," Michael insisted. "They're not just vague images, they're feelings, as if I've forgotten something very important." The doctor stepped back, putting away his instruments with movements slower than usual. "Michael, forcing these memories can be dangerous. Your brain blocked those recollections for a reason. Sometimes it's better to leave the past where it is." There was something in Dr. Silas's tone that made Michael frown. It was almost as if the doctor were actively trying to dissuade him from recovering his memories, something he had never noticed before. That afternoon, Michael made an impulsive decision. Instead of returning to the office, he drove to the city center, specifically to the area where he had first seen Lily and Carla. He parked his Mercedes in front of a cafe and walked the streets, watching the collectors at work, the children playing on the sidewalks. It was then that he saw her again. Lily was sitting on the steps of an old church, drawing on the ground with a piece of chalk she had found. Michael approached silently, curious to see what the child was creating. What he saw left him completely paralyzed. On the stone ground, Lily had drawn with impressive precision the floor plan of a house. It wasn't a typical child's drawing. It was detailed, with correct proportions, showing rooms, hallways, even a staircase. And Michael recognized every line of that drawing. It was his childhood home, the Ashford family property that had been destroyed in a fire 20 years ago. "How do you know how to draw this?" Michael asked, his voice coming out harsher than he intended. Lily looked up, showing no surprise at seeing him there. "It was my house," she said simply. "Your house?" Michael knelt beside the girl. "You've lived in a house like this before?" "Before the fire," Lily replied, returning to color one of the windows in the drawing. "I lived there with you." The words hit Michael like a punch to the gut. He looked at the drawing more closely, noticing details that only someone who had lived in that house could know. The built-in closet in the master bedroom, the back door that led to the garden, even the exact location of the fireplace in the living room. "Lily," Michael said, trying to keep his voice calm. "Where is Carla?" "She went to buy food," the girl replied, now drawing two small figures playing in what looked like the house's backyard. She said you were going to come looking for me. She said what? Before Lily could answer, Carla appeared at the end of the street, carrying a shopping bag. When she saw Michael kneeling beside the girl, her eyes filled with panic. She started running, ignoring the pain in her aging joints. "Lily, get away from him!" Carla shouted, arriving out of breath. Michael stood up slowly, his eyes fixed on the elderly woman. "We need to talk," he said, his voice heavy with authority. "We have nothing to talk about," Carla replied, pulling Lily close to her. "Leave us alone." "Carla Moreno," Michael said suddenly, the name leaving his mouth before he even processed where it had come from. "Your name is Carla Moreno." The woman froze completely, all the color draining from her face. Lily looked between the two adults, sensing the tension in the air, but not fully understanding what was happening. "How did you—" Carla began, but couldn't finish the sentence. Michael felt a wave of fragmented memories flood his mind. Vague images of a young woman taking care of him and another child. A soft voice singing lullabies, gentle hands healing scrapes. "You took care of me," Michael whispered, "when I was a child. You were there when—" "When what, Michael?" Carla asked, tears beginning to roll down her wrinkled cheeks. "When my sister—" The words died in his throat. Michael looked at Lily, truly saw her for the first time. The dark eyes, the shape of her face, the birthmark on her wrist that he now noticed was identical to his. The scar on her forehead that he had caused when he tried to save her from a fall. "My God," Michael murmured, staggering backward. "Lily, you are—" Carla hugged the girl tightly, shielding her from the man who had just discovered a truth that had been buried for 2 decades. "She was supposed to be dead," Carla said, her voice broken with emotion. "Everyone thought she had died in the fire, but I saved her. I saved her and ran, because I knew what your father was capable of." Michael felt the world spin around him. His twin sister, Lily, whom he had mourned for years, believing she was lost, was alive. She was here, on the streets of Oakbridge, being cared for by their former governess. But if she was alive, it meant that everything he knew about his family, about the fire, about the loss that had defined his entire life, was a carefully constructed lie. The revelations of the following days completely transformed Michael Ashford's life. After the shocking encounter with Carla and the discovery that Lily was his twin sister, the businessman spent 3 sleepless nights trying to process the magnitude of the lies he had lived for 20 years. Adeline Vance became his most important ally in the search for the truth. With her characteristic efficiency, she had managed to locate old records of the Ashford family, uncovering information that left them both deeply disturbed. On a cold Thursday morning, she entered Michael's office carrying a folder full of documents. "Michael, you need to see this," Adeline said, spreading papers across the executive desk. "I got access to the files of the insurance company that paid out for the fire at your family's house." Michael examined the documents, his hands trembling slightly. The insurance payout was astronomical, enough to explain how he had managed to build his real estate empire so quickly after taking over the business. $2.5 million, Michael murmured, "for the supposed loss of my sister." "But that's not all," Adeline continued, pulling out another set of papers. "I found regular bank transfers from your company's account to an account in Riverbend City, $15,000 a month for the last 20 years. Michael frowned. "15,000 to whom?" "To a private clinic called Serenity Haven, specializing in geriatric care for patients with dementia." Michael's blood ran cold. "My father." "Your father might be alive, Michael, and if he is, he knows exactly what happened to Lily." That same afternoon, Michael made the most difficult decision of his life. He cancelled all his meetings and drove to Riverbend City, accompanied by Adeline. The 1-hour trip was made in absolute silence, both of them processing the implications of what they might discover. The Serenity Haven Clinic was a luxurious establishment with well-tended gardens and architecture that conveyed tranquility. But for Michael, that place represented the embodiment of his worst suspicions about his father's dishonesty. "I'm here to visit Augustus Ashford," Michael said to the receptionist, trying to control the anxiety in his voice. The young woman checked the computer. "Mr. Ashford is in room 15, premium wing. But I should warn you, he suffers from advanced dementia. He rarely recognizes visitors." Michael and Adeline went up to the second floor, their footsteps echoing in the silent corridor. When they reached room 15, Michael paused at the door, bracing himself to confront the man who had shaped his life through lies. Augustus Ashford, now 72, was sitting in a comfortable armchair, looking out the window. His hair had turned completely white, and his stooped posture suggested fragility. But when Michael entered the room, his father's eyes immediately focused on him with a disturbing lucidity. "Michael," Augustus said, his voice still strong despite his advanced age, "I was expecting you." "Expecting me?" Michael approached slowly. "So you don't have dementia?" Augustus laughed bitterly. "Dementia is a convenient excuse for a man who wants to escape the consequences of his choices. Sit down, son. We have a lot to talk about." Michael remained standing, anger growing in his chest. "Lily is alive." "I know," Augustus replied calmly. "I always knew. You let me believe my sister was dead for 20 years. "It was necessary," Augustus said, his cold eyes showing the same hardness Michael had inherited. "You wouldn't have understood at the time, but everything I did was to protect our business, our family." Adeline strategically positioned herself near the door, discreetly recording the conversation on her phone. She knew Michael would need this evidence later. "Protect?" Michael laughed with contempt. "You faked the loss of your own daughter to defraud an insurance company." "The money was just part of the plan," Augustus explained. "There were other issues involved, issues you will soon find out about." "What issues?" Augustus stood up slowly, walking to a drawer in the nightstand. From it he pulled out a time-yellowed envelope, extending it to Michael. Documents that explained Lily's true origin, and yours. Michael opened the envelope with trembling hands, pulling out birth certificates he had never seen before. As he read, his face grew progressively paler. "This can't be right," Michael murmured. "Carla Moreno wasn't just our governess," Augustus said. "She is your biological mother, and Lily's." Michael's world collapsed completely. The certificates showed that he and Lily had been registered as the children of Augustus Ashford and a woman named Carla Esperanza Moreno, Carla's real name, before she took on a false identity to work as a governess. "She had an affair with you," Michael whispered, the reality unfolding in his mind. "We had a relationship when she was just 18, Augustus confirmed. But when I found out she was pregnant with twins, my official wife was already ill. I couldn't publicly acknowledge the children without destroying our social reputation. So you forced our own mother to work as a maid to care for her own children. It was an arrangement that benefited everyone," Augustus said coldly. "Carla could stay close to you, and I maintained the stability of the Ashford family." Michael felt nausea rise in his throat. "And the fire? Lily's supposed death?" Carla started getting rebellious. She wanted to reveal the truth, to publicly claim motherhood. It would have ruined everything we had built. Augustus returned to his armchair. "So I staged Lily's death in the fire. The plan was to send her far away, create a new identity for her, and use the insurance money to expand the business. But Carla ran away with her." "Carla betrayed me," Augustus said with resentment. "Instead of following the plan, she disappeared with the girl on the night of the fire." It took my private investigators almost 2 years to find you two living on the streets of Oakbridge. Michael leaned against the wall, processing the scale of the betrayal. You knew where they were this whole time? Of course I knew. And I've been paying Carla to keep quiet. The $15,000 a month your efficient assistant discovered. Augustus looked at Adeline with disdain. That was the price of her silence. Then why was Carla still living on the streets? Why was Lily in need? Because our dear Carla has an inconveniently heavy conscience, Augustus replied. She refused to use the money for herself, said it was dirty blood money. She kept it all in a bank account, waiting for the day you would discover the truth. Michael felt an explosive mix of anger and disbelief. For years, he had built a fortune based on the fraudulent insurance from his sister's supposed death, while she lived in poverty just a few miles away. Is there anything else you haven't told me? Michael asked, his voice dangerously low. Augustus smiled maliciously. Actually, yes. Dr. Silas Moreno isn't just our family doctor. He's Carla's brother, and my partner in this whole scheme for over 20 years. The final revelation hit Michael like a lightning bolt. Dr. Silas, the man he trusted with his physical and mental health, the doctor who had dissuaded him from recovering his childhood memories, was part of the conspiracy that had destroyed his family. Silas knew you were manipulating my memory, Michael said, the pieces finally fitting together. He gave me medication to suppress my childhood memories. Silas fulfilled his part of the deal, Augustus confirmed, in exchange for a significant share of the company's profits. After all, keeping you in ignorance was fundamental to the plan's success. Michael headed for the door, needing to get out of that place before he did something he would regret. But before leaving, he turned to his father one last time. My whole life has been built on lies, my fortune, my identity, even my mental health. You've had a comfortable life, Augustus retorted. You became a rich and powerful man. You can't deny the results were positive. At the cost of my sister's happiness, at the cost of robbing her of a decent childhood. Life is rarely fair. Michael, only profitable. When Michael left the clinic with Adeline, his legs were shaking so badly he could barely walk. During the drive back to Oakbridge, he remained in absolute silence, processing the complete destruction of everything he had believed in for 42 years. Now came the hardest part. Confronting Carla with the truth and finding a way to repair 2 decades of unnecessary suffering. The final confrontation with Carla happened on a rainy Sunday afternoon, 3 days after the devastating meeting with Augustus. Michael had spent those days tormented, unable to sleep or focus on any activity. Adeline found him in the office at 5 in the morning, staring out the window with eyes red from insomnia. You need to talk to her, Adeline said gently. With Carla, with your mother. The word mother still sounded strange to Michael's ears. For 42 years, he had grown up believing he was motherless, raised by a distant stepmother who passed away when he was 15. Discovering that his real mother had been there during his childhood, disguised as a governess, was a reality his mind still struggled to accept. Adeline had located Carla in a small rented room on the outskirts of Oakbridge, where she and Lily had taken refuge after the traumatic encounter the previous week. When Michael knocked on the simple plywood door, it was Lily who answered, her large eyes showing a mix of curiosity and caution. "Hi," the girl said simply, as if it were natural for him to be there. "Hi, Lily," Michael replied, crouching down to be at the child's level. "Can I come in?" Lily nodded and led him into the single room that served as a bedroom, living room, and kitchen. Carla was sitting on an old bed, her hands busy sewing a cloth doll for the girl. When she saw Michael, her hands stopped moving, and she looked up with an expression of deep resignation. "I knew you would come," Carla said, her voice heavy with weariness. "I spoke with Augustus yesterday. He called me." Michael sat on a plastic chair, the only one available in the sparse room. "So you know that I found out everything." "Found out what exactly?" Carla asked, though she already knew the answer. "That you are my mother, our mother." Michael looked at Lily, who was quietly playing with wooden blocks in the corner of the room. "That you spent 20 years protecting Lily while I built an empire with the fraudulent insurance money from her supposed death." Carla put the doll aside and finally faced Michael directly. At 67, her face, marked by life's hardships, told the story of decades of silent sacrifice. "When I found out I was pregnant with you two, I was only 18, Carla began, her voice low but firm. "Augustus was 30 years older, married, powerful. I was a naive girl who believed his promises. He said you had a relationship." "Relationship?" Carla laughed bitterly. "I had been working in his house as a maid since I was 16. He took advantage of my youth and inexperience. When I got pregnant, he gave me 2 options: have an abortion or pretend the babies were adopted children he and his wife had decided to raise." Michael's stomach churned. "And you accepted the second option." "I couldn't get rid of you," Carla said, tears starting to roll down her wrinkled cheeks. "But I also had no way to raise you on my own. Augustus convinced me it would be better for everyone if I stayed close, working as a governess, taking care of you as if you were just children under my professional responsibility." Lily approached Carla, sensing the emotional tension in the air. She climbed onto the bed and nestled into the lap of the woman who'd been her only true family for 4 years. "But something changed," Michael continued. "You decided to reveal the truth." "You were growing up," Carla explained, stroking Lily's hair. "Michael, you started asking questions about your biological mother. And Lily started calling me Mommy when no one else was listening." The revelation struck Michael deeply. He vaguely remembered a time when he felt a special connection with Carla, a love that transcended the relationship between employer and employee. "Augustus was furious when I told him I wanted to publicly claim motherhood," Carla continued. "He said it would destroy the family's reputation, harm the business. That's when he came up with the plan for the fire. The original plan was to send Lily far away, to an orphanage in another state," Carla confirmed, her voice trembling with restrained anger. "Augustus had bribed the officials to create a new identity for her. I was supposed to hand over my own daughter and pretend she had lost her life in the fire. But you ran away with her. On the night of the fire, when I saw Augustus preparing everything to take Lily away, something inside me rebelled. I took the girl and fled. I left you behind because—" Carla's voice broke completely. Michael stood up and approached the bed, sitting beside them. "Because you couldn't take both of us," Michael completed, finally understanding. "Augustus was watching you. If I had tried to escape with both of you, he would have found us quickly. But by taking only Lily, I had a chance to save her. And you were already so involved in his world, so fascinated by the business and the power." Michael remembered the fascination he felt in his childhood for the company offices, the important meetings, the feeling of building something grand. Augustus had purposely cultivated these inclinations, ensuring that Michael would become his natural successor. "All these years you received money from him," Michael said, not as an accusation but trying to understand. "Money I never touched," Carla answered firmly. "Every cent is in a bank account in Lily's name. I preferred to live on the streets than to use that dirty money." Michael pulled an envelope from the inner pocket of his jacket. "I brought the bank statements. It's almost $4 million accumulated." Carla's eyes widened. For 20 years, she had lived in poverty while a fortune accumulated in her daughter's name. "Augustus said you refused to use the money because of your conscience." Every transfer was a reminder of what he did to us, of what he did to our family. Carla hugged Lily tighter. I preferred to work honestly, even if it meant going without. At that moment, Lily looked up at Michael, her lips curving into a small but genuine smile. Are you going to stay with us now? The child's simple question broke down Michael's last emotional defenses. Tears he had suppressed for days finally rolled down his face as he reached out to embrace his sister and his mother together. I will take care of you both for the rest of my life, Michael promised, his voice choked with emotion. I will make up for every day of suffering you went through because of me. Carla touched her son's face, a motherly gesture that had been denied to them both for decades. You were not to blame for anything, Michael. Augustus manipulated all of us. In the following months, Michael made decisions that shocked the Oakbridge business world. He sold the construction company and all the assets acquired with the fraudulent insurance money, donating the equivalent amount to institutions that cared for orphan children. With the clean money left over from his legitimate activities, he bought a simple but comfortable house where he, Lily, and Carla could finally live as a real family. Adeline became Michael's partner in a new company, focused on building affordable housing for low-income families. The work was less profitable, but infinitely more rewarding. Michael discovered that his true fulfillment came not from accumulating wealth, but from providing decent housing for people who, like his sister, had known the hardship of living without a proper home. Dr. Silas was reported to the medical board and lost his license to practice medicine. Augustus, confronted with the evidence of his fraud, agreed to return all the insurance money and serve a sentence in a semi-open institution for elderly offenders. On Christmas Eve of that year, Michael watched Lily playing in the backyard of their new home, while Carla prepared the holiday meal in the kitchen. The girl had adapted surprisingly well to her new life, flourishing under the loving care she finally received. She's happy, Carla said, joining Michael on the porch. And you? Michael asked. Are you happy? Carla smiled, a genuine smile that lit up her tired face. For the first time in 48 years, I can say that I am. I can finally be a mother to my children. Michael hugged the woman who had sacrificed everything to protect her family, understanding that true wealth was not measured in bank figures, but in the ability to love and be loved unconditionally. As they watched Lily run across the yard, humming a children's song, they both knew that despite all the lost decades, there was still time to build the memories that fate had tried to steal from them. The Ashford family was finally complete, not by the name they carried, but by the love they chose to share. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment what you thought of my story with a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.